The topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Well, good afternoon. Bill Martinez here. The question that is hanging in the balance, it seems these days, no matter where you are in this country, and dare I say, even around the world, people are wondering, is it too late to rediscover America? What is going on? You know, America has a sitting president on the brink of impeachment for bribery and the politically motivated indictments of a former president, fomenting a lack of faith and confidence in our country's leadership. And it is impacting every aspect of our American way of life, from ourselves personally, our families, our communities, just about every institution that we used to believe in, right? Well, America must come back to truth if it's going to save itself. My good friend Scott Powell is joining us. He's the author of Rediscovering America, a fellow at Stanford Hoover Institution, currently a senior fellow at the Discovery Institute. Scott, good afternoon. Good to have you with us.
Bill, it's great to be with you.
Well, I'll tell you just a little bit, just to kind of let you know what's happening. A little family business here. Our daughter is in Maui. And, you know, Maui has been burning for the last couple of days. It's just been incredible. We see the devastation, the footage there. It looks like it is a war zone. The fires and the winds brought on by Hurricane Dora have just annihilated the city of Lahaina. And our daughter and our grandkids and son-in-law live in Lahaina. And we just got confirmation, Scott, that the houses around where they live in their community, unfortunately, burned down. Her house is still standing. Is that a miracle or what?
Yeah, praise the Lord.
Yeah, I mean, this is just amazing. So the thing, you know, what's happened is they had to evacuate, and they made it just in time. The way things, again, the hand of God had them in a position where they were able to get away as the fire was coming in so quickly upon them. You know, as the local officials said, you know, winds blowing 70, 80 miles an hour. It moved so rapidly, they couldn't, they were defenseless to do anything at all to retard the spread of the fire. And it just devastated that local community. But, you know, the Hawaiian people, the Ohana, the families there being what they are, have all come together. The kids have relocated temporarily with several different friends. I guess they're, you know, maybe couch jumping or whatever, but they're making it work with their friends in Napili, in the Napili Bay, and, you know, working things out as the days ahead are going to be long. I'm sure there will be more tears. There's going to be a lot of labor and, you know, heartbreak that will continue in the months ahead as they rebuild and recover, because that whole area, you know, Front Street, if you're familiar at all with Lahaina, where all the retail is taking place, that is all gone. In fact, including the banyan tree, that iconic banyan tree that's been around for over 100 years, that has got burnt down to its roots as well. The harbor across the way, all the boats, any of the boats that didn't get out to sea, they were all burnt down. So it's like I said, you look at it and you think, oh my gosh, this looks like a war zone. It's amazing.
Well, the only good thing that comes out of crisis is that people tend to come together.
Yeah.
So let's pray for that, and you know, they will recover.
Yes. Yeah. Well, the thing is, as an intro, I share that with you because in some sense, when you look at America today, we've become a shell of ourselves. And you and I have been talking about this. You stated quite clearly in your book, Is It Too Late to Rediscover America? And you pose the question. And you and I have maintained our faith in this great American idea, but more importantly, the people who still believe in it, Scott, right?
And there are a lot of people that still believe in our country and the principles that are really the foundational principles of our country. The most important one is that we're free people, that we have freedom to speak, freedom to think, and freedom is the foundation upon which all progress is made. Because if you want to pursue a new idea, you want to be creative, you have to have the freedom to do that.
Exactly.
And so when we think about progress is the outcome of free thinking. It is the outcome of people finding solutions to problems, finding better ways of doing things. And usually most major projects involve more than one person. So you've got to have debate between people, discussion about what's the best way to proceed. And you've got to be based on factual truth. You can't be, you can't manage a business when the books are cooked or when you don't have accurate numbers, right? So it's the same in every field. It's the same in science. Scientific progress is made by scientists having facts, using the scientific method to disprove various theories so they get closer and closer to understanding what is, what's the reality, what's the truth, what can we, what have we discovered here, what can we distill this down to. We need that in our country in order. Every society, if it wants to progress and succeed, needs to have freedom.
Exactly.
So we know that history is on our side if we can preserve our freedom, because countries that are unfree, like China, cannot ultimately succeed.
Right. Well, exactly. And we see clearly what's happening by contrast. You said something that's really important here, and we need to emphasize that when we talk about freedom, you're talking about the very foundation on which this country stands. And the very foundation on which it stands and where freedom comes from, it doesn't come from a political party. It didn't come from the Pilgrims. It didn't come, from any European king. It only came from one king. And that is the King of Kings, the King of all kings, the Lord of lords, God Almighty himself. So that is the foundation on which this republic was built. Now you take away any part of that foundation and it starts to crumble. And I would dare say, Scott, and you point this out in your book, this is what we're realizing. And this is why you said, and you and I have been in agreement from day one on this, is we have to return to first principles. And maybe you can address to the people, into those that are watching, what we mean by first principles.
Well, first principles are the foundational principles of. They're the building blocks, if you will. It's you could call it the foundation, or in some cases, there's a critical one. We might call that a cornerstone. The cornerstone keeps all the other stones in place. And I would argue that freedom, free speech, free thought is the cornerstone of all of the other freedoms.
Right.
Now, the founders, in their wisdom at the time of the Constitutional Convention, after they had arduously crafted an amazing government that had three parts to it: the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary. That division. That division was intended to provide checks and balances so that abuse of power could be mitigated. In other words, the founders recognized that fallen nature, that sinful nature, abuse of power is a reality. And therefore, we have to create a system that can sort of keep abuse of power in check. Right. But at the same time, they wanted to create a system that honored people's rights and gave them maximum freedom so that they could, make the most out of their lives. They could find meaning, fulfillment. Right. Ultimately, Jefferson called it happiness, the pursuit of happiness. And most people find that it isn't money that makes you happy. When you profile and you talk to successful business people, you will find that they're not necessarily completely motivated by money. More often, they're really motivated by building. by creating new things, by solving problems. And many of them
by being acknowledged, that you're worth something and that you're part of the conversation. We're talking with Scott Powell. He's the author of Rediscovering America, currently a senior fellow at Discovery Institute, a member of the committee on this present danger, China. Go ahead, Scott, pick it up from there.
So that's our major, what we see, the restriction on freedom now in America is really unprecedented. We've never experienced this kind of fundamental challenge to our unalienable rights, our God-given unalienable rights, which are protected in the Constitution, in the Bill of Rights. Mm-hmm. First Amendment is under assault like we have never seen it before.
Exactly.
And it is being assaulted by none other than our government, which our government is trying to restrict speech, restrict access to information. And, we could trace this back to at least in sort of a big way, a seminal way, something called Project Mockingbird, which was which was developed after World War II, and the Soviet Union became a big threat. We had an unfolding Cold War. Somehow it was believed that American people's, that we needed to prevent some views from being heard and other views being allowed to be expressed. And so Project Mockingbird involved penetrating the media in America. This is back in the 1950s.
Right.
So people that talk about how the media is biased today, well, it has its roots at least in the 1950s.
Sure.
Because Project Mockingbird was a major operation. It involved 400 journalists in all the different branches, all the major media, all the major newspapers, all the major TV networks at that time had CIA operatives within them. Can you believe it? It's true.
Yeah, right.
Well, that went on, and it was not really discovered for at least 20 years. So you assume they never closed it down. So what we're experiencing today with the government influencing social media, influencing the major media, this is nothing new.
Exactly. Well, Scott, real quick, just interruption here regarding Project Mockingbird. Didn't that give rise to Senator Eugene McCarthy? In a sense?
Are you speaking of Eugene or Joseph McCarthy or
Joseph McCarthy? I'm sorry.
Yes. I can't speak to that. I know that Joseph McCarthy was terribly maligned. Mm-hmm. In fact, he was a patriot, and he found that the communists had he identified communists and what are known as fellow travelers that had penetrated the U.S. government. Mm-hmm. And we still have those people today, I might add.
Oh yeah, in bigger numbers.
Bigger numbers.
Yeah, exactly.
And
Trevor Loudon enumerates them.
Right.
Yeah.
Few of them pay tribute to Moscow. The majority of the communists in our government now pay tribute to Beijing, to the Chinese Communist Party. And we have people, look, Joe Biden is the most high-profile example of this all, where he basically was compromised. And I believe he's a controlled asset to a large extent.
Yeah, no question. I think Miranda Devine pointed that pretty clearly in her book, The Laptop from Hell, the captured elites. But I believe as we continue to pull back this onion skin, we're going to realize that there's a lot more people than we realized that have been captured by the CCP, Scott.
Oh, absolutely. And, we don't necessarily have to, finger them, identify all of them. I think the people that have violated the law need to be, they need to pay a price. They need to be prosecuted.
Right.
If someone has committed treason, sedition, there should be a price to be paid. Now, we know going back in our history that treason was a capital crime for which the death penalty was appropriate. I'm not making a case for that at all, but
I think you got to take it seriously, though, Scott.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Because the people, and it's funny, Democrats will be the first to say, we want to make sure this never happens again. Well, if you want to make sure it never happens again, there has to be consequences, right?
Serious consequences.
We're seeing on the streets of America, there's no consequences, so you keep getting more crime, right? And I'm of the ilk now. I'm becoming one that says, look at you see all these young kids going out and destroying cities and stealing and all this that's going on. And and the question is, people ask, they go, where are the parents? And I go, yeah, where are the parents? They should be jailed. Jail the parents. And I'll tell you, that'll curtail some activity really quick.
I think it might. Yes.
I'm just saying, just a thought.
Just a thought. Well, I think, Trump has recently come out and said that he would favor the death penalty for pedophiles. People who violated children should face the death penalty. Well, that's probably something that would deter some pedophiles, if not most.
I think it definitely would down the road, because right
Yes.
now we're so mired. We have no idea the depth of the pedophile ring that exists. I mean, you have an idea because look what happened with Jeffrey Epstein and
Yes.
how quiet it's become. I mean, it's like as they said in the movie, the cockroaches have scrambled. I mean, and you're realizing, like you said, it's not necessarily that you have to point them out, but you can see by the fruit of their policies and the things that they support that they're really not serious about stopping human trafficking. They are abettors to the sexual trafficking of young kids, pedophilia, and the sexual perversion that's being thrust upon our young kids in the public institutions, educational centers today across America.
I think that all the information regarding Jeffrey Epstein and his so-called black book and so forth has been sequestered, hidden, because it would reveal too much, that would reach too many high places. And I believe that the deep state, we might find out that the so-called deep state that controls so many things actually was using Jeffrey Epstein, that Jeffrey Epstein was part of this operation to compromise high-level people in government and the private sector. In the private sector, we have none other than Bill Gates, who frequented Jeffrey Epstein's island and plane. And when he was interviewed about it, you could see by his body language that Bill Gates was guilty. He showed guilt beyond a shadow of a doubt for anyone that understands body language.
Right, exactly.
So look what Gates is doing. He's part of this, cabal of people who want to depopulate the earth and are willing to use vaccinations to do that, poison people. He's buying up farmland. Why is he doing that? Probably to restrict food, right?
Right.
Because the big game plan is in depopulation is a many faceted effort that includes poisoning people. It includes reducing production on land, restricting fertilizer. It goes on and on and on. And what you find is that these things are all tied together.
Yeah.
They're tying restricting fertilizer use to the Green New Deal, to air pollution, to releasing too much CO2 and methane. It's an incredible confluence of factors that are going on. And so people need to understand the mainstreams of this operation to take our freedom away and ultimately take the sovereignty of America away.
Well, you're exactly right.
The game plan is for America to end and be subsumed, to be part of a new global order. America stands in the way of this global order.
Yes,
because
no doubt.
we're the only country in the world that has a constitution which gives people rights that are sacred. They're God-given rights. And so America is the chief bulwark against this this new world order, this globalist new world order. And it is Christians within America that are the very front line. And that's why Christianity is under attack like never before. And we have to be aware that we are under attack, but that God is on our side, and that we need to keep telling the truth, keep peeling that onion back, as you say, Bill.
Yes.
We want to peel back the onion as much as possible to find out all of the truth and how it's all related, how the enemy is working.
Right.
And then we need to stand firm and stand up and push back. If we push back, if enough people push back, we can stop this. That's the important thing to understand. We do not have to have a civil war.
Exactly. Scott, we got to go to break. More from Scott Powell. Stay with us.
If you're a CPAP user and you have Medicare, staying healthy with new CPAP equipment is easy. Just make this free phone call right now to get started.
Sponsored by Specialty Medical. 800-254-1421. 800-254-1421. 800-254-1421.
Attention timeshare owners. Tired of the financial stress? Were you misled by the salesperson? Don't or can't use your timeshare anymore? If any of these apply to you, then you may qualify for timeshare cancellation and get the relief you need now. Timeshare Defense Attorneys is the #1 affordable fixed-fee legal solution in the country, with an A+ Better Business Bureau rating. That's certainly better than my grades. They even offer a 100% client satisfaction guarantee. Let one of their experienced lawyers evaluate your case and explain the process. If they take you as a client, they'll work on your case until it's resolved in your favor, guaranteed. Expect great service and a close working relationship with your lawyer, keeping you informed every step of the way, protecting your rights, interests, and even your credit. It's that simple. Even a kid like me can understand it. The consultation is free. Call today.
800-296-1332. 800-296-1332. That's 800-296-1332.
You make me smile, Bill.
Here, and we continue our conversation with Scott Powell. His book, Rediscovering America, that is available in all the usual places, a must read. It will be an inspiration to you because the things that are happening in our country today, you know, there is a big disconnect from our Constitution. And you will begin to realize that your eyes are not lying to you. And then you will take the next step. And that is what we always have been encouraging our viewers, our listeners to do. And that is to own your own knowledge. As Scott was saying earlier, the World Economic Forum has a goal, you know, a one world government. Now, we know that a one world government will precede the legitimate one world government because that's what happens. You always get the counterfeit before you get the legitimate. So we're going to have to go through the counterfeit. And the counterfeit tells us that I think it's by the year 2030, Scott, if I'm remembering correctly, according to their manifesto, Klaus Schwab said that by 2030, you will own nothing and you will like it. And he says also that by then as well, you will be eating bugs and you will like it, right?
That's right, Bill. I mean, we laugh, but I think they actually are serious.
Yeah.
So we don't
until they find out that bugs are releasing methane worse than cows. But that science is yet to come out.
Yeah. you can be sure that they won't be eating bugs.
Right.
That the leaders will be eating caviar and salmon and steak and beef. It's us, the peons, the people that will have to be serfs and slaves to the elites. So the beauty of America is that we are a country of the people, by the people, and for the people. And the original vision of our founders that really was carried out by imperfect governments and presidents over many decades through the 1800s. I mean, we fought a civil war, and that was over. It started out over the issue of secession because the southern states felt that they had been violated. It wasn't just that it was slavery at issue. They had many complaints against Washington's rule, not the least of which was taxation, that that a lot of commerce was going through their port of Charleston and elsewhere, and terrorists were being sent to Washington, and they never got any money back. So it was very similar to the complaints of the founders in the original Revolutionary War. Anyway, secession took place. That was that was the catalyst for the Civil War. Underneath all that was the issue of slavery. And, Lincoln was not doing well in the Civil War. The Confederacy was winning for the first 16 months. Right. And Lincoln was a prayerful man. He took everything to the Lord in prayer, and he finally got an answer why he wasn't getting God's favor. He realized that I need to align the cause of the Civil War, not with secession, but with the issue of abolishing slavery. And once he really understood that's what he needed to do, he drafted up an Emancipation Proclamation, which was released on January 1st of 1863. And the fate of the war changed after that.
Because Scott, that was really the real issue, wasn't it? All along, it was about slavery. Because
they knew that about Lincoln, because Lincoln was very well known for being a very anti-slavery political candidate. He was very unusual in coming to the presidency from one term in the U.S. Congress. He only served one term. That's never happened before, except with Donald Trump, who served no terms, who came from the private sector, didn't come from a military background. He came strictly from the private sector to the presidency.
And the other thing too, Scott, real quick, I'm sorry, just to remind everybody that, he didn't get in on the first time that he ran. I mean, he had many failed campaigns. Right. So when you consider the timing, the topic, I mean, if you don't acknowledge and recognize the hand of God, that Abraham Lincoln was the man for a time such as this, wasn't he?
Oh, he was. He was an amazing man. He wasn't perfect. Right. In fact, of all the presidents, I believe you could see his growth as a Christian more deeply and profoundly than any other president, because he was on his knees in prayer during the Civil War. His whole, he stepped into the Oval Office, into the office of the presidency in March, because inaugurations were later back then. Right. And there already seven states had left the Union. He'd lost 7 states. Wow. The very beginning of his administration, he has this crisis on his hands. And when the Civil War, broke out, he was on his knees perpetually because he really cared about the people. And he didn't, it wasn't just a winning of the Union. It was preservation of the country that he really wanted to see. And he then wanted to see that all rights should be extended to all American people, that blacks had all the rights of white people, and that there's no compromise on that. There's no middle ground on that. We have to realize they need to get full rights. And so by the end of the Civil War, blacks, in other words, were they free from slavery? They could vote, but we had black lives, black laws, and then Jim Crow laws. So segregation and discrimination followed us all the way into the 20th century. Now, the skeptics would say, well, you see, America, you never really solved the problem. We have this racism. Well, guess what happened? God raised up another remarkable man. His name was Martin Luther King. He was not a perfect man. No one whom God has worked through is perfect. God only has sinners to work through, period. Right. Do we get that? Do we understand that? Can we agree on that?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. So Martin Luther King but he was dedicated to this cause of equality of all people. He spent 15 years of nonviolent civil rights activism that sent him to jail 29 times, and ultimately an assassin's bullet took him down, but he succeeded. And after the civil rights movement, there were a dozen laws, that were legislated over the next years that gave blacks full opportunity. There was no barrier. Nothing was unavailable to them. In fact, as time passed, we even sort of tipped the scale in their favor with preferential treatment and employment practices. So this notion that the woke culture would roll all of this back is absolutely insane and must be stopped, because we were making remarkable progress, up through the 80s.
Right.
And admittedly, we took some wrong turns with taking prayer out of school, with legalizing abortion. And one could argue that, homosexual marriage diminished the sacredness of marriage and therefore led to other things. And now we are at a transgender moment, which is crazy, because it defiles God's creation, right?
Exactly.
God created us. We can't improve on that. We can't change that.
No. Well, like you said, is that, and the thing that I find quite interesting is laws were already in place before the mid 60s. And it's interesting that we're talking about 100 years after Abraham Lincoln.
Right.
Then you have the entrance of Martin Luther King Jr. and basically reminding people that laws were there. But as you started out this particular portion of this segment, we're talking about the failings of man, the fact that we're human beings, the fact that we're not perfect. And it's interesting, especially when it comes to politics, how politicians strive to reinvent the wheel over and over again. Because oftentimes, Scott, I got to tell you, they come up with laws and they act like it's something new, and you're going, we already have that law. Why don't we just enforce the law that's already in play? Why are we going through all this shenanigans to create new laws when all we have to do is follow the ones that are there? Now you're going to give us some new laws that you're not going to follow anyway. So why are we going through this?
Well, it's called kabuki theater. It
okay.
comes out of Japan.
All right.
In other words, they go through this theater because they assume that the average person has no memory of what's already been passed, and they purport to solve a problem.
Right.
And they get
the problem that they create,
right.
and then they want to for solving the problem, but actually they end up making it worse. It's kind of like, again, in the mid 60s, Lyndon Johnson decides, we're going to have a war on poverty. Well, the poor people at the time go, God, I didn't even realize it was that bad, right? And so here we are. And I was talking with Charles Woodson from the Woodson Institute, and I asked him, I said, look at, what are we, 50, 60 years down the road? We've spent 25, maybe $30 trillion since the war on poverty. How are we doing after this investment?
Terribly.
We barely moved the needle after all the people's money that we've invested under this faux deal. And what it was all about is, what was the motivation of Lyndon Baines Johnson? In his words, I can't say it directly because it is an insult, but basically he said, he told the Southern Democrats, if we pass this, we will have those ends voting Democrat for the next 100 years.
Well, I believe that was a big part of it. I think we have to remember that if we're to solve problems, we have to align all of the solutions with the way God designed us.
Amen. Amen.
And when we do that, we will be successful.
Exactly.
So creating a new plantation where Black people are receiving welfare, and they receive more welfare with the more children they have out of wedlock, that's been so harmful to our country, not only in busting up the Black family, but when you take the male figure out of the home, what do you have? You have no discipline and authority and training for children to be, to honor the law. You have an explosion of crime, really.
Exactly. And of course now, and now in their brilliant deduction, they go, the problem with America is there's an epidemic of fatherlessness.
Yes.
Well, no kidding. If you
That's
take them
right.
out of the home and you put them in jail and they're not there to be there with their kids and raise them up in the manner in which they should be, well, then this is what you've got. We've got to go to break. We've got more from Scott Powell on the other side. He's the author of Rediscovering America. Stay with us.
President Biden recently released a massive $6 trillion budget, the largest budget in U.S. history. And guess who pays the bill? That's right, you, the American taxpayer. American citizens and business owners will be paying more taxes. That's a fact. And if you owe back taxes, they will be coming after you to collect payments. In fact, President Biden also hired thousands more IRS agents to go after you. If you got a letter from the IRS and you know you owe back taxes or you haven't filed in years, don't put your head in the sand. Call us today. We've saved our customers millions of tax dollars. One quick, free phone call will show you how we can reduce your past tax bill and save you thousands. Guaranteed, or you pay nothing. Call now.
800-932-1597. 800-932-1597. That's 800-932-1597. Paid for by the Tax Helpline. Has your heater or air conditioner busted? Appliance broken? Computer crashed? Then you need an ARW home warranty. Home system and appliance repairs and replacements can cause stress and cost you thousands of dollars per year. With an A-plus BBB rating and a top-rated home warranty company on Consumer Affairs and Trustpilot, ARW Home provides superior service, featuring the industry's lowest service call fee. ARW Home has warranty plans that cover your kitchen and laundry appliances, heating and air conditioning systems, electrical and plumbing systems, and much more. Call 800-559-7562 to customize your plan. Plus, ARW has partnered with Azurian to protect your new and used tablets, laptops, TVs, and other home tech from accidental damage and wear and tear. All plans come with a 30-day money-back guarantee. Call 800-559-7562.
How would you like to save money on nearly all your prescription drugs? We've set up a special toll-free number for the RX Outreach Program. They're a nonprofit company whose mission it is to make prescription drugs more affordable to the masses. They don't take insurance, and in many cases, your prescriptions are even cheaper than your co-pays. They carry thousands of different prescription drugs, so whatever you're taking, there's a good chance they have it. No coupons are required, and this is not a discount card. It is pure savings on your prescription drugs. They specialize in generic meds for any chronic health needs you have. Call with your prescription and find out for free how little you can pay for your prescription drugs. Remember, we don't take insurance, so call right now.
800-705-6581. 800-705-6581. 800-705-6581.
Hi, sweet.
Well, we're back with you. Bill Martinez here. Good to have you with us as we continue our conversation with the author of Rediscovering America. He's a senior fellow at the Discovery Institute, member of the Committee on This Present Danger, China. Scott Powell is with us. Scott, I just want to go back a little bit and talk about these foundational issues. The benefits that we, the people, have received as a result of what I determined to be our birthright that came from God, not from politics, because I believe this whole American idea was an answer to prayer. The Pilgrims, for many years, for I think 10, 12 years, sought God, petitioned God that they would have a place where they could come to and to be able to worship Almighty God freely. And God answered their prayer, and they honored it. And it was like we entered into, the Father enters into covenants, and that He entered into a covenant with our founding fathers, starting with the Pilgrims, and it went forth from there. But out of that came our birthright, which is clearly, in my humble opinion, is enumerated in these founding documents. The Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights. I mean, this information And the enumeration of these rights are so brilliant that you know that it could never have come from one man, that it had to be from the divine. Even our first president, George Washington, admitted as much, right?
He sure did. Absolutely. I mean, I would like to, we wouldn't do justice to our audience without giving them reasons for hope in what is a dark time. Right. And the hope really comes about by understanding how God, how God protects his people, how God will enable his people, and how God will even perform miracles when we're faithful to him. This is the story of the Israelites leaving Egypt under Moses' leadership. How was it that they weren't annihilated by the greater forces of the Pharaoh's army as up against the Red Sea? Because they were faithful. God intervened through Moses. The sea was open, and it wasn't just open for them; it was closed up on the evil forces. So, when God moves, he not only helps his people, he can destroy God's people's enemies. Mm-hmm. And I think those days are coming for us, because that is the way God has worked throughout history. The beauty of Rediscovering America is it tells all these stories. And Bill, actually, I would go back before the Pilgrims and point out to your audience that Columbus was motivated by two factors in crossing the ocean. He believed the world was round and that he could find a new route to the Far East, to India, to China, to the Spice Islands. They were conducting that trade around Africa and overland. And then when the Muslims blocked it off, Columbus was inspired. Well, okay, if our way east is blocked, we can go west. He had this vision, and he was a great evangelist. He, what's remarkable about Columbus is that he's like a fresh Christian, where he was all excited about spreading the good word of God's salvation to people who had never heard it before.
Right.
So exactly. He was motivated to go to places where he was sure they'd never heard the gospel. And remember, Christianity only was a Mediterranean religion, Northern Africa, Middle East, and Europe. Yeah. Christianity had no extension beyond that. So he knew by going, anybody he would meet in going west, it would be good news for them. It would be, they never heard it before. And he had a passion for this. So, the lesson of Columbus is that we can combine our practical, professional lives, our endeavors with also God's work. And he was a remarkable guy because he combined that so well. And that it was that combination of qualities that we're seeing in King Ferdinand and Isabella, who are Spanish. Right. They're the ones who chartered his 3 ships to go and find a new passage to the east and to Christianize, because they wanted, they'd driven the Muslims out of Europe, South Spain, and they were called to expand Christianity. So Columbus, people don't know this about Columbus. He was a remarkable man, not a perfect man. Nobody is. Mm. Yeah. But the Pilgrims and the Puritans that followed them, both, it's amazing. Both of them spoke about their position being equivalent to the Israelites leaving Egypt and going to the Promised Land. They both the Pilgrims and the Puritans viewed their going to the New World in the same way that the Israelites were going to the Promised Land. They viewed coming to America as the Promised Land, God's promised land.
Well, and you see the model of God demonstrated in then this American idea, and how it was so similar, as you mentioned, for the children of Israel leaving, in the Exodus, leaving Egypt, coming to the Promised Land. And so many similarities there, right? With the hand of God protecting them. And here we are, just like the Israelites, fighting the number 1 military force of their time, actually God fighting for them. Here, the United States as a colony, as a group of colonists, fighting against the number 1 military force. But for the hand of God, America doesn't happen, right?
Right. No, absolutely. Absolutely. And that same those same patterns actually can be traced through the history of America. It's incredible, actually. I was recently reading about Eisenhower, and Eisenhower had the exact same words almost that Adams and Washington had in saying that America, the Constitution in America, was designed and would work only for a moral and religious people.
Right. You see, and therein lies our Achilles heel right now, where the country is. And when you've got, Scott, it wasn't that long ago. What, in the 1980s, 90% of America believed in God. Now we're down to what, 62%? I mean, that is a huge slide. And look at the difference between then and now.
Right, right.
And the difference is God's not there. The difference is having the 10 commandments in the hallways of academia in high schools and elementary schools across the country. Let's take the 10 commandments out of there. Let's take God out of there. Now look at the hallways of these public schools.
Right. And remember that one of the chief strategies and motivations of the evil one, Satan, is to take down the good. In other words, they have no tolerance for moral people, for Christians. They want to bring everyone down to their level of uncivility and rebellion. These are rebellious people.
Exactly.
Satan rebelled against God's order. And we see it manifesting itself today in the spiritual world around America. It's a spirit of rebelliousness.
Exactly. It started in the garden and it continues to this day. Right. The only difference that we have versus then and now is that our Father in heaven sent his only son to bring us back home, Scott.
That's right. That's right. and I do believe that as more people who are confused, who are despondent, in despair, demoralized by what's going on, as they turn to God and God's numbers grow, we're going to see a turning, the likes of which we've never seen before. And so I would say to the audience, you are the salt and the light. Mm-hmm. Talk to your family, talk to your friends. There is a better way for us forward to live in fulfillment and happiness. The Declaration of Independence articulates that we should pursue happiness. Indeed, God intends us to have joy and happiness, but we're not going to get it by tearing everything down. We're going to get it by returning to his ways. Mm-hmm. In that, I would remind everybody there's enormous freedom.
Yeah.
You don't have freedom when you're driving on the highway to violate lanes and drive speedy. In sports, you can't violate the rules. You can play hard on a football field, but if you violate the rules, guess what? You're penalized.
That's right.
Exactly. And that's the way life is, that you have freedom in this place, but we have to follow a few rules, and the rules are there to protect us, not to constrain us, not to enslave us, but to protect us against making mistakes that hurt us.
Right. Well, the thing is freedom's for everyone, and you can't extend your freedom and violate somebody else's freedom because it's no longer freedom, right? That's the beauty of this. This is why God has just given us just this awesome gift. And if you really think about it, it is the ultimate, Scott, that we have as humanoids on this planet. And guess what? Those evil forces at every turn are doing everything they can to reject us and take it away from us, because it is that mighty force against evil. And this is why they're doing everything they can to cancel God. Let's get God out of every institution, out of the Democratic Party. We'll take God out of the platform. We'll just go ahead and kill babies.
Out of the Pledge of Allegiance too, I might add.
Exactly. Yeah, we'll dress men up as girls. We'll let men go and compete with women. This is what was coming.
To take everything down, pure and simple. Exactly. They want to take down every institution. They want us. They want to destroy us to rubble so that they can take over, basically. So
Scott, we've got 30 seconds left. I'm going to let you summarize and remind everybody how they can get their hands on Rediscovering America. Go ahead.
Well, Amazon, of course, kind of dominates the book business. They have cut the price by almost 50%. So it's a wonderful time to purchase the book.
Mhm.
But the book is a source of great hope. You might call it a user's manual on how America was so successful early in its period and how we can save this country today. It is a book to help us save America and empower us, because when we take action, God works.
Amen. Scott Powell, thank you, my friend, for being with us. I appreciate you so much. He's the author of Rediscovering America. For more information and to be a part of this mighty Martinez movement to return to God and to save our country, go to BillMartinezShow.com. May God bless you and keep you and make his face shine upon you, and may you have peace. Go and be blessed beyond your imaginations.